Mukasa Mbidde, thank you very much, Honorable, for joining us this evening. First, what do you make of the EAC heads of state resolutions in the effort to push the regional agenda?
First of all, I got extremely excited on the matters that the summit handled. First of all, was the matter to do with the consensus within the East African community integration agenda. It had to be established and subtended untold imbroglio within the community, to the extent that we even sought the advisory opinion of the court, of the East African Court of Justice, in terms of interpreting what consensus really refers to. It has always been confused with unanimity, and it was actually unclear whether we could be unanimous on any matter, to the extent that the principle of variable geometry had also been invoked to dress up the jump. Now that they have taken a decision on 65%, in my opinion, that has solved a great deal. Now, when you get to, of course, a decision on material to do with the arrears within the East African community, financing mechanism, and also equally the establishment of a remuneration and welfare mechanism for the East African Legislative Assembly. I think they have done, again, a great job. Although, when you send remuneration and welfare to the substantive states for purposes of the individual members of the East African Legislative Assembly, there must be a capping procedure established. Otherwise, the countries within the East African community fold that are based on a welfare kind of bantigism, they will definitely be in a position to pay lesser their own members than some of the members, for example, from Uganda and Kenya. They will be, and that will now again occasion a problem of violating Article 60D on equal opportunity. And in my opinion, then that will also find ourselves in courts of law. So they need to establish a capping, because that must now make sure that even Burundi pays their own members the same salary, which in my opinion will be over and above salaries paid to ministers, cabinet ministers from Burundi.
Okay, now one of the resolutions is waiving of 50% of arrears for member states that are grappling with subscription fees, Uganda inclusive. Could this be a huge relief and resurrect the spirit?
Yes, but also something needed to be qualitatively looked at, and that is the goodwill of these partner states for purposes of course, illuminating the integration agenda. I still have a feeling that where goodwill really was buttressed within the partner states, we would not have the arrears that have been occasioned by those substantial partner states. These partner states can be able to pay. If arrears and if, for example, subventions were actuated per capita from the tax payments and tax levels within the partner states, in my opinion, it will be a natural phenomenon. However, they have done a great deal, and it is a sign of magnanimity. We hope for the best, that the East African community will solve its own finance problems.
Now, Honorable, before we let you go, the other recommendation is that EALA members of Parliament will no longer suffocate the EAC budget, as their remittances will be made directly by their local parliaments, which you hinted on directly. But what are the implications of this move?
The first implication is going to be that we are going to look at members of Parliament that are actually not equitably remunerated, because each partner state has got its own remuneration and welfare structures. Now, unless the East African community is given a capacity to establish a capping procedure, or a procedure where no member of Parliament should be paid less, or at least the amounts are determined at the headquarters of the East African community for purposes that compliance is with the partner states, I am looking at it as a reversal of the integration agenda, where the East African community cannot remunerate its own members of Parliament of an organ, and they send it to be a partner state affair. I have still a problem. I can look at it as if it will work, but there is an underlying weakness that, in my opinion, we are beginning to focus on. The failure by the East African community to remunerate one of its organs, and that is the legislative organ. In the whole of East Africa, members of the East African Legislative Assembly are the only leaders elected for integration business. The rest are elected to lead their own partner states. If those are the ones that have been actually not remunerated, there is going to be a problem. And I think we need to also look at it. As it moves forward, I think we need a substantial, long-term, research-based solution that we need to apply to that kind of end.
Thank you very much, Honorable, for joining us and for your analysis on this particular issue. Now, moving back to Kampala, traders are counting heavy losses after